Hello, you lucky people. Well, I mean, how could your day get any more exciting over the top of a CIMA case study insights presentation that Kira's kindly introduced me into today? You will have a copy of the slides, but I'd recommend getting a pen and paper just to take some keynotes down. I'll be walking and talking you through some of the key aspects that if I had to treat myself to the case study examination on there, how would I go about it? What would I be looking for? And this is where we have the pre-scene information that we're going to have a quick recap as to knowing about your role in the situation, and then how we can take some of the pre-seed information and utilize it effectively. We're going to get kicked off, as always, with a nice little breakdown as to 4 different areas that myself and the Learn Signal team put together just to help you out. And as always, we'd love to see you not just at today's webinar, but at future webinars and collaborations with the CIMA team. So if you're on your phone, you're on your laptop, feel free to connect with myself on LinkedIn, Learn Signal and CIMA, as today's webinar is all about Flatthall on here. And you're going to be considering point number 1, your main responsibilities associated with management accounting. Now, historically, for the case study, that can link into other areas as to profitability, costing, resource allocation on there. This is where, as to your preparation, you've got to be really thinking on your feet. It's the level of detail, or should I say thinking on your toes on that, that is going to pull in other areas that you've also covered, which you can see in point 2 there about the E2 syllabus. Stakeholder relations. I mean, lots of people ask me, James, from a case study perspective, are there going to be any particular areas that are going to definitely come into my case study? And stakeholders are definitely in one point or another going to be in there. I'd be having on my mind key terms of internal stakeholders versus external ones. And we've also listed down there for you, that's quite a key bit for you to note down, the team members, senior managers, board of directors, the government of Toland, and others which we could be thrown in on the case study, the unseen information. But it's really just getting you thinking as to what impact are these individuals actually having, and then also how is it relating back to the requirement that is being set. As a finance manager, you can see on here, you'll definitely have to support and this is the next key term for you to get down, strategic decisions. Okay, strategic decisions. In this case study, there are going to be 2 areas that you will be asked in terms of the requirement. Strategic, for your notes, 3 to 5 years, depends on the sort of definition, but generally speaking, long term. But linking back to the management accounting we saw in point 1 up at the top there, that is what I would have down as operational decisions. So strategic decisions for you to get down in your notes, the long-term aspects. And then we've got other areas that are more operational based, the day-to-day, week-by-week sort of situations. You'll require knowledge of investment appraisal, pricing strategies, performance management, risk management on there, all linking back to that P2 syllabus. And last but not least on there for point 4, as a finance manager, you've got to assist with, oh my word, how did we guess? Financial matters on there. But the key bit, which is the separator between someone who's going to pass the case study versus not, is that key bit for your notes there, transactions using IFRS. So transactions using IFRS, the standards itself specifically for group accounts, and the application of those standards to the scenario. That's what I would get down for your notes as imperative things that you should be looking at before you actually sit your case study. But for my knowledge as to help you out as much as I can for today's webinar, for everyone who's tuning in live, and for Kira's pure entertainment as well, because who knows, ladies and gentlemen, I might convince her to do the CIMA exams one day. Could you let us know in the chat what month this year you are planning on sitting your case study on there? Is it in the short term on there? So is it coming up in actually on May or June on there? Or we sometimes have some students who come along who have just simply got their feet up, everyone. Maybe thinking about doing it for much later on into the year. I'd be just curious, and so would Kira and the Learn Signal team and the CIMA team, as to all you lovely people who are joining us today, when are you planning on doing your case study on there? And this will get you a bit familiar with the platform. And Kira's going to chip in now just to let us know what's the sort of general consensus, Kira? How are we looking?
Yeah, so as you'd probably guess, the majority of people are saying May at the moment. We've got a couple
Mm,
of keen people that are sitting it in August, so they're getting ahead of the game, but most people are in May.
nice, lovely. Thanks very much on there. And yes, frantically taking down notes of James, what am I going to have to think is an absolute imperative for Flatthall on there? Rest tight. You'll be fine. I'm going to walk and talk you through now some of the key areas of Flatthall as to what would I be having in my arsenal going into the actual case study on here. So these are sort of four key point areas that it's just to sort of set the scene as to what is going to be imperative to have going through your mind so that whatever they throw at you in the unseen information and on the requirements on the day, you can handle it. And again, I'm only just going to highlight some of the key terms for you. Pioneer and the largest provider of purpose-built student accommodation in Toland on there. So I'm thinking large market size, they've probably got a good brand image on there. So I'm thinking financial and non-financial aspects that I could link that into in my answer. Because if I'm marking your work, key bit for you to get down for these 4 points is application to the scenario. And if you can be specific, like you can see on there about Toland itself, or being specific about the purpose-built student accommodation as a marker, you're already in my good books on there, because you're factoring in that we've got, for point number 2, a quoted company on there in Toland with a capacity of accommodating 78,000 students. Now, I know we may have some ladies and gentlemen today a bit like myself, where my student days were a long time ago on there. But thinking about housing 78,000 students, think of the buildings behind that. Also, quoted company, that is going to be, in terms of the disclosures on there and the complexity, it all goes up as a result. It also means that the risk goes up, because what are the chances that something could be thrown on the unseen information, that something's happened to one of those students in one of the accommodations on there. For point 3, we've got down there the main value is defined by providing safe and attractive accommodation for students in Toland on there. Key ones for you to get down: safe, attractive. I'm thinking there for those two keywords, if anything gets thrown at me on the day of the case study, I'm referring back to that, because one key tip to take away from today's webinar, and I had this when I did my exams and helping students now, please don't expect it to be all sunshine and rainbows and everything's going to be fluffy and marvelous on there. There are going to be things that are going to go wrong, and you're going to have to add your input to it, your knowledge, and then applying back to the scenario. And they've touched on it in points 3 and 4, ensuring to create value by identifying potential sites of new properties in locations where there is demand for student accommodation is not being met. So that gives you some insights as to, there's going to be opportunities on there. You could link it into some SWOT analysis for it, but it all links into strong relations with student accommodation services at university, providing, again, that keyword of attractive accommodation at realistic prices, which students are prepared to pay for it. So there are a few keyword for you to get down, the variables on this slide: the attractiveness, the safeness, realistic prices, and then lastly, relations I would have down as the keyword with the universities. Those are some of the areas that could come up as to, hang on a second, something isn't going quite right here. And then from that, you've all seen it on in the real news on there with some news stories about students who are struggling with accommodation issues around the UK and globally on there. And this is where for Flatthall on here for the news stories, actually referring to the Townland Daily Informer or the Daily News on there or the Jess's student blog, just pop it down that if you are going to refer to these in your answer, make sure you are specific to which news story it actually is. And we've got on here completion rates of degree courses. We've got about, it explains the comfort you can get to load student stuff for your journey. There are different factors about the student experience that this case study is to get you thinking proactively about a real world business situation. It's not just about the numbers and interpretation on there. Key bit for Jess's study blog at the bottom on there is the keyword is risks involved in damaging the property during the stay, and also talks about the planning regulations. So those two words, risks, regulations, get them down in your notes as to, again, something on, I don't have a crystal ball on any of these sort of things, but we've got to read between the lines as to say, they're going to throw something at me on the case study day. Well, I better be on my toes as to what are the variables that it could link into. We then have the business model. You can see on the right hand side, again, that keyword of attractiveness on there, all the amenities. Again, if you've not been to sort of university or college or had actually rented any sort of accommodation, feel free to Google it on there. Some of the make them, let me think about your previous student accommodation experiences. I mean, I think one of mine was just the shower just didn't work on there at one point, which wouldn't be down as very attractive for it. They do hint on collecting realistic rents from students for perfect built-in space. So there is an income aspect highlighted on here. So revenue recognition could be a bit of an aspect to be considered. But topical in the world of finance recently is costs are going up due to factors like inflation. And therefore, if you want to maintain the same standard of service, perhaps you could pop down in your notes, are they going to pass any of these costs onto the students, which are going to actually increase it? In terms of Toland now, for some key highlights for the country where it's actually based, well-developed education system, 215 institutions. Again, just try and read through the lines as to these sort of facts on there about a sort of 3-year degree course. So students will need accommodation for 3 years. Out of the 215, how many is the company actually operating in? What are the relationships like on there? The government actually promoting education. So it looks to me like a sector with the subsidies and student loans that is going to be prosperous moving forward. The country attracts a large number of overseas students. So again, in terms of your sort of supply and demand, I would get down that. So you've got home students and international. Then we've got for the last 5 years, the number of students increasing from 2.3 to 2.7. Again, maybe you want to pop in your notes that you could calculate the percentage increase on that, with then also the factors of what that could mean for future potential revenues as well. So just another little flavour that you go, easy one to work out that you could apply in the case study. A little thing on there about the academic year starting in September, ending in May. So would the rent be just for September to May? Would the accommodations be empty June, July, August? These are sort of factors that if it's empty for 3 months out of the 12 months of the year, could there be a new opportunity to find other rental income sources from that? And then at the bottom, why should you know this information? Well, again, we've touched on it before. Strategic decisions on there, building the portfolio. We've already related it to demand on there, the analysis of the company's growth factors. In other words, it's looking quite prosperous for this company moving forward from the products and the services that they sell. For the student accommodation itself, we have to look to the local students and the international students. Local students, 40% of those choose to live with families, 60% chose to actually look for accommodation. So that 60% is the market that we're looking at on here. And then we have the types of student accommodation. So you've got halls of residence and then private rental to actually cover in as well. So it's the opportunity to maybe sway the market, and are some students being um, priced out of actually going for one particular sector over another, like private rental on there. So the demand for student accommodation is increasing. As you can see, 51% of the market in private rentals. And the key word on there, opportunity for Flatthall to actually go into this sort of unexplored market. If I always think if they've got a bit of experience in the sector, that they've clearly massive there, why have they not looked at the private sector as another potential option? Again, something they could throw in on the unseen information, or you could actually pose to accompany the purpose-built student accommodation. So they've already done purpose-built student accommodation. Why don't they think about private as well? And just in case you needed any sort of clarification about the sort of halls of residence, private rentals on there. So halls of residence provide these accommodations to students on campus. And then this is where students can actually live and continue their studies. It's part of the university's actual structure. In terms of, I'm sure anyone who has lived in halls of residence will not miss their single furnished bed with a sort of small storage space on there. But the private rentals, this is where I'm thinking now in terms of margins, and then also potential expansion as well. We have landlords on the side here. We have furnished rooms in terms of a flat or a house where you can actually get groups of friends involved. And again, it's a case of there are risks associated with that. You can see health and safety. Maybe we're going to get an example that they do try it and something goes wrong. But it's just so that you apply the right industry information. We then have at the bottom purpose-built student accommodation. Any city you go to now in the UK, you'll see this. Amenities offered, very attractive to students, usually in walking distance. And then this is where it's more sort of specifically designed on there. And the key bit I would have definitely as a phrase to use in the case study when I'm writing my answer, Flatthall is the pioneer of purpose-built. Maybe we're going to get something about competition. Maybe we're going to get something about demand on there. But it's that sort of statement that I'd look for a student to apply in their answer. And then in terms of comparisons between the halls of residence on there, the student accommodation and private rentals, this is where, again, I don't have that crystal ball. If I did, I would know that if Leicester are going to get promoted this season or not. But in terms of the pros and cons on here, there are different areas and variables that some are common sense, like what rents include, and then the sort of facilities you have, and then the private rentals. But this is where I would say for your notes, just in case you get a specific question, we have on here private rentals are cheaper than the PBSA on there and allows friends to actually stay together and share rents. So there are less rules and regulations followed by the tenants on there. So you've got rules and regulations and the pricing factor. And this is why the private rentals, maybe they want to go into it, maybe they don't. In terms of expense, then we have the PBSA is the most expensive than all the other options. So that's the student accommodation which they actually operate in. But in terms of private rentals, they are less secure compared to the other options. So again, there are lots of pros and cons. Something is probably going to get mentioned on the unseen information about potential opportunities. As you can see on here, we've got unique selling points. And then this is where key points to remember about the company information. So we've got founded in 1994, close to the Central City Metropolitan University. And I would have down words such as like, it's got pedigree, it's got on there a reputation. They're probably going to be actually, I've used the word probably, that they should be secure in their finances with the positive response from customers on there. I don't like calling students customers. Actually, the occupiers of the actual student accommodation, And the key bit on there, we've also got the company was listed on the stock exchange in 2002. So it's been operating, it's not been delisted, it's not a newly listed company. So again, that should actually fill any potential investors or students if it was going to go into any potential problems. It does sound pretty sturdy to me. We have key unique selling points of the company on there. So we have a property portfolio looking at a variety of different locations and also looking at expansion on there. Good response to students who have any queries, comply with all the safety regulations in Poland, maintaining strong relationships with both the students, accommodations, and the universities. Again, the alarm bell should be ringing to you whenever you hear that, just to say, hang on a second, this all sounds too good to be true. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And this is where on your unseen information, then this is where we then need to actually consider what could come up on the actual day. And then we have Flatthall on here, along with a comparison to another competitor in the market on there for Duvet. But you can see on here in terms of we've got the revenue growth, we've got the operating profit margins calculated on there. Again, feel free to take a photo of the screen. They will be sent out to you later on. But in terms of Flatthall, for worth taking down in your notes on there, we've got the gearing ratio less than 50% for Flatthall. So they're actually lowly geared, they've got less interest to pay, whereas Duvet is actually leveraged quite highly in terms of its gearing. So they're highly geared on there, over 50% for it. But in terms of cash reserves, they're looking pretty similar on there. Revenue for Flatthall, as you can see, a lot higher. But in terms of growth, Duvet is the one that is stretching out with 19.06 to 15.5 on there. But the operating profits, the tax expense, dividend payouts, I mean, they're all pretty similar as a result. So we now need to touch on, as I know we've got some students here who are going to be doing this exam in a few months' time. We've got others who are going to be doing it next month. And this is where it's like when you come to one of these webinars, you get the insights from me, but then it's also what can I say to you today that could be the difference in you passing and dropping me a message on LinkedIn next month and going, hey, James, when's your webinar? Followed the advice, followed that one key tip, and that was the difference in me passing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the one key tip, if you're stuck for conversation, chatting to your partner or this evening, or if you're out with friends, is 2 words: time management on there. Time management. And it's these 4 scenarios, 45 minutes each, the tasks that you'll set, and navigating between the pre-seen information that we've been going through today, the unseen information, and between tasks. That is the difference. And I'm going to say something now that you're not going to like, but the only way to get around this is sitting down, doing questions to time, under exam conditions, and grinding it out. I know you don't want to do it. I know it's the weekend coming up. It's Saturday on there, and you're going, oh, James, I've had a long week at work. I just don't want to sit down and go through it. Well, trust me, it's one of the key areas that because my life is so entertaining and I speak to markers on there, that students sometimes just completely miss out requirements. They don't go into enough depth, but time management. And then that links into the key themes that you can see on the screen. So these are areas of theory that are pulled forward that are linked to your case study. So we have the P2 theory on there, more sort of costing, management accounting, all the joyous areas as you look through them, you're going, oh my gosh, well, investment appraisal is quite nice on there. E2 theory in the middle, the sort of people side of it, the business models, leadership approaches, relationship management. Again, some of these buzzwords that we've already seen today that are imperative to how this business works, along with stakeholders at the bottom. Please expect some E2 theory on there. And then last but not least, for your more entertainment, we've got on there the revenue from contracts, group accounts, financial instruments, IFRS, standards on there to be applied, and then also your ratio analysis at the end. But again, just to keep you on your toes for today's webinar, before we get on to our short and sweet Q&A, feel free to post in the chat either P2, E2, or F2. Which of these on the screen for the topic areas would you say are the most trickiest on there? And this is to help out our lovely guests today who have got their feet up, looking forward to this in August. But we may have some students who are resitting today and are wondering, oh my word, what areas should I really focus in on? Which are the tricky areas that students are finding difficult who are going to be sitting the same case study as me on there? So that is where feel free to post it in the chat on the side, P2, E2, or F2 on there. And Kira can jump in to let us know what is going to be looking the most likely on there as the one they're worried about. I bet you we're going to have someone who's put all of them, Kira.
We actually don't this time. Normally we do, but this is the most diverse response that we've seen. So there's quite a big mix of all of them today. I'd say slightly leaning towards F2.
Yeah. Oh no, thanks for that. Yeah, I would say generally speaking, F2 and P2 are the ones which cause students the most amount of difficulty. The E2 theory for your notes, everyone, is you can get around the business models, the theories on there if you apply back to the scenario, get into your habits of actually writing down the company names, referring to any specific people who are working at the organization. All those things are really going to help you out with applying the actual theories. Now, this is one on here where, again, I don't have a crystal ball or anything on those lines, but this is where we can take some of those areas. Myself and the Learn Signal team have been through the pre-seen information, and then you say to yourself, what kind of gives me the ick, if I'm allowed to coin the word on there? I'm far too old to use the word ick, but it's a case of what areas do you think could be okay, that could have a chance on there. So if we start from left to right, some of the key issues that I touched on earlier in the presentation, the high debt value, the high gearing on there, increasing competition because of the potential in the market with the different revenue streams, uh, only 16% of the actual market size. So again, do you see it as an opportunity or do you see it as hang on, is someone coming to actually take it? And then finally for low turnover, again, it depends on how we're measuring that, but please expect something on the case study day on the unseen information will relate to profitability or revenue on there. In terms of the growth strategy, rapid expansion, high brand value, we touched on that about it being founded in 96, then it's been listed as well. They base it on customer relationships, high operating profit margins, satisfaction on there from the service they provide. Again, from my glass half empty approach, I'm thinking there, what could go wrong here? What contingency plans have they got in place? And potential opportunities, we touched on the private rentals, expansion outside of Tolan could be on there, and residential corporate spaces. Looking to maybe diversify that if student numbers go down, rentals go down, others will bring it up as a result. So just a flavour. Again, I can't promise anything on there, but this is where it's a case of, well, when you go through it, think on your toes and then actually say to yourself, right, what area of the syllabus is this referring to? And this is where I think it's really important that you see from Happy Well Holidays, a recent test that if you get a chance, do it as a mock paper, do it to time. It's a really good one on there. And you can refer back to these actual slides because there are different variants of the case study, but it's just to showcase to you that in terms of the core activity for each of the 45-minute tasks, look on the side there. You can see the little letters for A, D, C, B, and it's a complete variety on there. You could get absolutely any area. And one other key tip, which I had a little chat to a few students about a month ago on it, and it was about when you move from one task to another, granted, it's going to be based on the same company on there, but anything that you've included from the previous task isn't going to relate to the next one. So you can have a look on some of the actual what was designed to be tested. You can see on the side there, we've got everything from challenges, we've got the head of engineering in task one, in terms of authority from a business perspective. And then we've got the actual board of directors on there in terms of advice, maintaining, and a sort of costing question. It's just to showcase to you visually and for your expectation going into your case study that there is going to be a variety of different areas tested, and you've really got to be thinking on your toes as to, right, what area of the syllabus, how am I going to go about this, what areas do I need to consider? Is it, like you can see on there for task 2, goodwill on acquisition? Is it about demand on there? And this is when your revision comes into it, that between now and the actual May examination for your case study, if you've done lots of these tasks broken down into 45 minutes, done it to time, then you'll realize how quickly the time goes, and then also the variety of core activities and the different areas of the syllabus that you'll be examined on. And last but not least on there, it's just again, just if you want to have a look at the core activities down the side, negotiation processes, transfer pricing on there, suitable tools, capital projects, digital ecosystems was task number 1. Maybe the final thing to say for this is, for the last variant, is if you get a difficult core activity or difficult task 1 that you get a bit thrown off, I hope this just gives you some visual encouragement to say, okay, I went to James's webinar. I had a little look through. I saw that they talked about everything and everything on here. Maybe I might get the first 50% of task 1 not done quite well, but there are definitely marks for me to be had because I know they're going to test different areas in 2, 3, and 4 on there. So do not lose hope and do not lose the enthusiasm if you have a bit of a tricky one at the start. If you'd like to scan the QR code, if you've got your phone on you at the moment, these are some case study mocks which cover all of the key areas that the Learn Signal team have available on here. And it's again, you can see some of those key areas that I touched on in the presentation: risk, uncertainty, leadership styles, internal and external stakeholders, along with accounting treatments that link into IFRS. These are fundamental areas that I've come up on all the variants, I've come up in the past, and you just need to, the best bit of advice I can give you on that is you just need to be familiar with the pre-C materials so that you know which areas they relate to, and then being on your toes as to on the day of the unseen, you're going, right, something bad's going to happen here, something needs my attention, and I'm going to have to address it, linking back to the scenario and work out which of those areas it's going to relate to. So feel free to scan the QR code, check them out on there in terms of the mocks. The more mocks you do, the better the chance you have of passing. And this is where you can see on here, this is lovely Ken on here who has passed his examinations and case studies on there. So you can see some super marks on the side, but this is where, in terms of the mocks itself, you can check it out. The Learn Signal team are completely open in terms of student feedback. You can even just email the team and they'll actually give you a few little feelers for what you can expect in terms of if you were to actually use them. So I'll put on the final slide the email if you want to check out any more of the Learn Signal details. I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. Kira's not going to tell me off, everyone, because I am bang on time. So if you'd like to keep in touch with myself, Learn Signal, and the CIMA team, so you don't miss out on any future webinars, you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is on there. So yes, I hope you enjoyed it today, and I'm going to bring back in Kira. So if you have any questions, we have the box on the side. Feel free to pose any over there if you want some advice on maybe your studying process, revision, anything on those lines. More than happy to help.